Good afternoon, folks. We're going to start in Chapter 5 here today with our warm-up. We want to solve these equations. So remember, solving means to isolate the variable. So we need to get rid of everything around the variable, starting with whatever's farthest away. So in number 1, the first thing we're going to get rid of is this 5. Please notice there's still a negative sign in front of that 3. So x is negative 2. Over here, we'll distribute first. Don't forget a negative times a negative is a positive there on that 32. You can keep this as positive 31 over 8 because a negative divided by negative is a positive. As a mixed number, it would look like that. And as a decimal, it would look like that. Any of those three answers are acceptable. Over here, I got to move my smaller x over first. And we get x is 5. Okay, so isolating the variable. If you look at the bottom of your page, and if you look at all your examples, you'll notice that none of them have equal signs. None of them are equations. All of them have greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to signs, which means they are inequalities. Okay, inequalities. So for example, x is greater than 5 is an inequality. X is less than 10 is an inequality. How many numbers are there that are greater than 5? Well, there are infinite numbers that are greater than 5. These things have infinite solutions. Okay, so in order to solve them, we're still going to isolate, just like we did with equations. But then in order to show all those infinite solutions, we need to graph them on a number line. Okay, so this is not going to be an XY coordinate plane kind of a graph. This is going to be a number line graph. Okay, a couple of things that we need to make note of. First thing is, if there's an equals bar, it is going to be a closed circle. If there is no equals bar, it is going to be an open circle. Okay, the closed circle for the equals bar means you can include that number. The open circle, if there's no equals bar, means you cannot include that number. You want to make the variable come first. And I'll show you how to do that here in a couple examples. And then you will shade in the direction of the arrow. Okay, so those are kind of some steps for your number line. There is one thing that is a little bit different than equations. You need to remember that when multiplying or dividing by a negative, you must flip the symbol. Only when you are multiplying or dividing by a negative, you must flip the symbol. So we're going to go through and we're going to solve all these. Okay, we're going to isolate the variable, then we're going to put that answer on the number line, because remember, there are infinite answers and there's no way we could write them all out. Okay, so number 1, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to isolate the variable. Okay, variable's isolated. Notice the variable comes first. That says t is greater than 24. So I'm going to make myself a number line, and I'm going to put 24 on that number line. There is no equals bar on that greater than sign. So that will be an open circle, and the numbers that are greater than 24 would be shading to the right. That is the direction that the greater than symbol points. Number 2, to isolate the r. Looks like that. Please notice that the r does come first. So I'll put this 12 on the number line with a closed circle. And again, that says greater than, so I will shade to the right. Number 3, to isolate that x. Notice this time that the x does not come first, so I need to make that x come first. I am going to flip the whole thing around. My 1 goes on the number line. This will be an open circle because there is no equals bar and it's greater than, so we are shading to the right. So all of the solutions are to the right of 1. That's what that graph says. To isolate the p in number 4, looks like that. Notice the p does come first. We'll put that 5 on my number line, open circle, because there's no equals bar. This time it's less than, so I'll be shading to the left. Those are the numbers that are less than 5. To isolate the x in number 5, I'm going to multiply by 2 since it's being divided by 2. Notice the variable does come first. Close circle on that 8 because of the equals bar, shaded to the right because it's greater than. Number 6, same idea. We'll multiply by 7 on both sides. Notice that the variable does not come first, so I'm going to flip the whole thing around so the v is first. 14 on the number line with an open circle, shaded to the left. All right, number 7. In order to isolate that r, I've got to multiply by -3. Now notice I just said multiply by -3. In the beginning of this, I told you when you multiply or divide by negative, you have to flip that symbol over. So I flipped it. It looks like that. The variable comes first, so I'm good to go. 15 on that number line with a closed circle, greater than means we're going to shade to the right. Okay, so that was the first time that I multiplied by a negative, so I flipped that symbol. Number 8. This time I've got to multiply by a -6. That's again multiplying by a negative, so I flip my symbol over. Now please notice that variable does not come first. So I have to flip it again, and it looks like that. 0 on the number line with a closed circle, less than means we're going to shade to the left. Moving on to number 9, this time let's isolate that variable. We're going to subtract the 2. Then I'm going to divide by a -3. Again, notice I divided by a negative, so I'm going to flip that sign over. I've got a -2 on my number line, open circle, less than means I'm going to shade to the left. So all the answers are to the left of -2. Number 10 here, this time I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. Looks something like that. Now I need to divide by the 3/8. And I get, oops, that should not be an equal sign in there, excuse me. That should be a greater than or equal to. I don't need to flip anything. I didn't multiply by a negative. And I get 1/3 here. Variable does come first, so I'll put that 1/3 on my number line, close circle, shaded to the right for greater than. Number 11, isolate that x. The first thing I got to get rid of is the 2 down here. Notice I am not flipping my symbol because I did not multiply by a negative. I multiplied by a +2. Now we'll isolate. Then we'll divide. Again, no flipping required here. I divided by a +3. And your mixed number answer would be that. Your decimal answer would be that. So I'm going to put -18 2/3 on my number line with an open circle. And that says greater than, so I will shade to the right. Number 12, first thing I'm going to do is distribute. Now we're ready to isolate. Looks something like that. Divide. Notice I divided by a negative. So I flipped my symbol over. The variable does come first, so I'll put that closed dot on there. Greater than means we're going to shade to the right. And number 13, let's distribute. Notice that'll be a +18 on the end. And we'll isolate. Now we'll divide. Notice I'm dividing by a negative. So I got to flip that symbol over. And then my variable doesn't come first, so I actually need to flip it right back. Put that 60 on my number line with a closed circle. It is less than, so we will shade to the left. All right, so there are 3 starred problems. You are going to solve those on your own. Okay, all 3 of those. Isolate those variables. Make sure the variable comes first. Okay, and then put them on a number line, please. When you're finished, your homework is page 304, numbers 1 through 4 and 10 through 15. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.